Welcome to IVF This, episode 20, You Can't Hate Yourself Pregnant. Welcome to IVF This. I'm your host, Emily Ginn. I'm a mother to two beautiful and feral boys. I'm married to my favorite person in the world. I'm a social worker, a life coach, and an IVF warrior. I'm here to teach you how to manage your mind and emotions during your IVF journey, to break free from anxiety and regain control of your life, even in the midst of infertility. I'm going to teach you to say IVF this to how we think about, talk about, and experience infertility. Let's go. Hello, my beautiful friends. I am so glad you are joining me today. Today, I'm going to spend some time talking about something that I refer to a lot on my Instagram page. So if you don't already follow me on Instagram, well, you should. Instagram is where I spend most of my time and build out a lot of concepts and share musings and such. And I want to tell you a story about one of my clients. And she was my very first IVF client when I was transitioning from general life coaching to IVF. And she's so lovely, and she's been through multiple rounds of IVF, retrievals, FETs, the whole gamut. On one of our first calls, she was talking about toxic positivity and forced positivity. And she offhandedly said, no amount of positivity can get a baby in your belly. And without thinking, my automatic response to that was, yeah, but you can't hate yourself pregnant. And I knew in that moment, that was going to be a cornerstone of my work. If you have listened to me or followed me for any period of time, you will have probably heard me say this or something very similar to this. You have also probably heard me talk about talking to yourself like an asshole. These two things are inextricably linked. If you're not talking to yourself like an asshole, then you probably don't hate yourself. And if you don't hate yourself, you're probably not going to talk to yourself like an asshole, or at least not as much, right? So they're the same side of the coin. Now, always full disclosure, because I am totally human, I do think that all of us, even my coaching mentors, still have an element of this in their own lives, but they've just gotten into the habit of noticing it when it happens and countering the basic and normal process that our brain does. So they catch it when it happens so that they can steer themselves towards more helpful thoughts. I still work on this. This is the definition of lifelong work. In coaching, we talk about there is no destination, right? It is a continual process. So let me take a minute to explain why we talk to ourselves like this. And I know you guys know that I'm going to take it all the way back to anthropology, right? So when we were evolving as a species and we were living in tribes, we had to follow social norms. If we did not follow social norms, then there was a very good potential that we would be cast out. If we were cast out, that meant certain death. So falling in line was a life or death equation, right? Shame is a wonderful mechanism for keeping people in line. And it served us well when there were these environmental needs that we have, these environmental threats, but we don't have those same needs and we don't have those same environmental threats, but we have the same habituated thought pattern. And that's where we find ourselves in this negative self-talk. It is literally just habituated thought patterns, a mechanism for keeping us in line. Some thought that we have over and over and over, or multiple thoughts. So we have a habituated thought pattern, which means that the way we talk to ourselves is just a habit, nothing more than that. It doesn't mean you're fundamentally flawed as a human being. It just means you're a human being. So now let's talk about that within the context of infertility. So following social norms was essential for us to not be cast out of the tribe. For women, the essential function of our lives then was procreation, having babies. Without having children, the tribe could not continue. Literally, procreation would have meant that the species died out. And this is where infertility shame is born. And if you want to hear more about this, you can check out episode 4, which is completely dedicated to shame. So we have shame-based social norms, the tendency toward negative thinking, and then we tack on this tendency to self-judge based on our perceived shortcomings. These all lead us to this propensity to treat ourselves terribly. You add this onto years of messaging from the diet and beauty industries that basically tell us that there is always something wrong with us, that they have the cure for the things that we hate about ourselves, right? Just feeding the monster within us. Then most of us are not taught or have not had it modeled for us what self-love and self-acceptance looks like. Because the people who would have taught us didn't learn it themselves either. And this is kind of the aspect of generational healing that I truly believe is an element of my work, a big element of my work. There is this subtle subconscious belief that the harder we are on ourselves, then the better we will work, the more motivated we will be. That there is this belief in order to get what we want, we have to push and push and push and push. And part of that is talking to ourselves terribly. You're not doing enough. If you're not doing enough, it means that you don't care, that you don't want it bad enough. You're a loser. You just need to put in more effort. Why can't you do these things? I know all of us have some variation of this, but I want you to see something else. These are incredibly vague statements. They don't actually tell us anything that we could do to improve. It is literally just our brain shit-talking for shit-talking's sake. Okay, so now we're on an infertility journey, and all of the things that I just mentioned come into play. All of the shame, blame, vague sense of not enoughness, all of the running themes that heavily influence us when we get to a place in our lives where we want something so badly, and it is just not happening. But since healthy acceptance has not been taught or modeled to us, we employ the same tactics that we typically do with things like diet, exercise, work, achieving anything. I've got to want it enough. If I don't do everything possible, I'm not trying hard enough. I have to take all the supplements. I have to do all the acupuncture. I have to read all of the articles. I have to do anything and everything. And if I don't, or more accurately, if you're telling yourself you aren't, then you must not want it badly enough. We have this very distorted perception that in order for us to earn something, for us to want something badly enough, we have to fight for it. Blood, sweat, tears, and the unintended consequence of that is hating yourself. Now, you might tell yourself, I'm doing all of the things I am quote unquote supposed to do, and it's still not happening. So that must mean that my body is betraying me. I can't trust my body to get pregnant. I can't trust my body to stay pregnant. I can't trust my body to take care of an embryo or baby. I can't. And I know for some of you, this feels very true. This inner dialogue. And this is pretty explicit smack talk, right? What about the less explicit, more implicit, less direct smack talk? What about the, maybe I'm never going to be a mom. I'm never going to get my happy ending. I can't give my partner a child. I'm never going to have that family portrait, the pregnancy or birth announcement that I want so badly. These are much more sneaky and insidious thoughts that we have, but they are still forms of hating yourself. It's believing that you will never actually get the thing that you want and believing that you'll never actually get to be happy. All of this is a form of trying to hate yourself pregnant. I will stop and say, because I mentioned supplements and acupuncture, that I don't think that supplements, acupuncture, guided meditations, changing your diet, I don't think any of those things are bad at all. But they are, in and of themselves, just circumstances. And that isn't what makes us feel terrible. What makes us feel terrible is the belief that you have to do those things, right? What makes you feel terrible is that when you aren't doing those things, then you shame yourself for not doing them. What makes you feel terrible is unless you are completely consumed with this process, then you don't want it bad enough. Okay, I want to address the elephant in the room. Can you get pregnant while thinking all of these things? can you get pregnant while hating yourself? Yeah, sure shit you can. I did it. Many of us have gotten pregnant with these same thoughts. It's totally possible. But here's the thing. Number one, a baby won't change these thought processes for you. You will move from one avenue of obsession, getting pregnant, staying pregnant, to what that little creature finally comes here, right? You'll move from one thought process to another. And two, and probably most importantly, why the hell would you want to? Just because we can physically get pregnant while hating ourselves, it still means that the prize at the bottom of that Cracker Jack box is that you hate yourself. It still means that there is no metric or achievement that you can get that will fill you with love and acceptance. There is no magic switch that gets flipped in your head when you get pregnant or have a baby, and all of a sudden you no longer hate yourself. If you think there is, that the root of your unhappiness is solely because of your infertility, I would encourage you to listen to my episode titled A Baby Won't Solve For. So I want to offer you 6 examples of how you can talk to yourself. Not the actual words, like 6 different filters that you can run your thoughts through and see what comes up. This is one of my favorite exercises for helping people to access compassion for themselves. This will require some paper thinking on your part. If you haven't heard that term before, it is what I call journaling, okay? You start out with writing all of the things down that you think about yourself. You don't have to hold back. Let it all flow. The good, the bad, the ugly. No one else is going to read it. So don't feel like you have to filter out or soften some of the things that you say to yourself. In fact, if you do that, this exercise will be much less effective. Okay, so you have your thoughts on paper, your paper thinking, and I want you to pick out a few of them and write one thought per line. Then leave a few lines blank and then write the next thought. You can do as many thoughts as you want. I like to do at least 6 because there are 6 filters, but that's totally up to you and your comfort level. And you can use multiple filters if there's a filter that you don't like to use. It's totally up to you. There's no wrong way to do this, okay? So each filter starts with talk to yourself as though you would talk to, number 1, your best friend. What would you say to your bestie if she said even one of those things to herself? What is the tone of voice you would use? Would you hold her? Would you let her cry, or would you tell her to suck it up? Would you point out all the amazing things that you love about her? Would you poke holes in the things that she says to help her understand how amazing she is? Write down how you would respond if your friend said the thought that you wrote down. What would you say? Talk to yourself as though you would talk to a child. Would you be dismissive of a child that felt lost, hopeless, scared, sad, or angry? Or would you acknowledge their fears, their anger, their sadness? Again, would you hold them or would you scold them? Would you nurture them or turn away from them? Write down how you would respond if a child said the thought that you wrote down. Number 3, talk to yourself as though you would talk to a stranger. Now, I'm not talking about the stranger that is a total creeper with a panel van and you're pretty sure that he keeps people hidden in his basement. I'm talking about the older woman that is struggling to carry her grocery bags, or the young mom that is doing everything to keep her baby quiet during the grocery store run and looks like she's on the verge of tears. Maybe the woman at the pharmacy counter who can't afford her medications. How would you treat them? Would you ask them if they needed help? Would you judge them harshly about not being able to, quote unquote, handle things? Would you show empathy and compassion for someone that you had never met, but could visibly see pain in their eyes? Write down how you would respond to a stranger if they said the thought you wrote down. Number 4, talk to yourself as though you would talk to your pet. Now, this one always makes people giggle a little bit, and that's okay. It's totally fine. And if you don't own a pet, this filter might not work for you. Again, there's no wrong way to do this. But think about if your pet needed something. food, sleep, a snuggle, a treat, or for God's sake, to go to the bathroom. Would that be one of the first things on your priority list or one of the last? Would you ignore their needs? Would you refuse to address what they needed? Would you tell them that they're being dramatic or argue with them about their needs? Write down how you would respond to your pet. Number 5, talk to yourself as though you would talk to your romantic partner. Again, you don't have to have a romantic partner currently to use this filter, or you could exclude it completely. If your partner was hurting, crying, blaming themselves for something that was completely outside of their control, how would you react? One of my amazing clients, she told me a story of how she told her husband some of the things that she says to herself, and he responded, "Hey, don't talk to my wife that way." That's pretty dreamy, right? How can we use that? If that is your partner, or if that is how you want to talk to yourself, use that filter. Hey, don't talk to myself like that. It's one of my favorite things to do. And finally, number 6, talk to yourself as though you were your favorite indulgence. What do you love? Chocolate, going for a run, a walk on the beach, Netflix, a bubble bath, whatever it is. What would you tell that thing that you love if they said to themselves what you think? Would you agree with them? Like, yeah, you don't deserve me at all, or I'm not worth it. I don't know about you guys. I would never let a cupcake say to itself, I'm not worth it. No, you're 100% worth it, boo-boo. And I'm going to enjoy you the entire time I'm eating you. When we do this exercise, when we practice this work, we are fundamentally rewiring the conversations we have with ourselves. We're never going to completely stop the BS thoughts from coming in. What we are doing is hacking the brain. When it spits out some BS, like we just take a look at it through one of those filters. We acknowledge what is said, and then we show ourselves some compassion for why we might think that, while knowing full well that it's not true. And then we remind ourselves, that's just not how we talk to ourselves. That is not how I talk to myself anymore. I will not tolerate that type of conversation any longer. We don't do that here. It can be anything like that, whatever it is, but it is possible. You deserve to be happy with yourself, with or without a baby. And you doing this kind of work doesn't take your eye off that prize. It just expands your field of vision to the bigger prize. And that is what I have for you today, my beautiful friends. Remember, I adore you and you have got this. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of IVF This. If you like what you've heard, click subscribe and follow to make sure you don't miss an episode. And if you want to learn more, head over to www.ivfthiscoaching.com to learn how to work together.